Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey.
Marshall, we've been talking for like an hour, and we both just put on the fakest smile in the history of man when you said, "Are you ready?" And then we pressed record. We both went from, like, yeah, okay, let's do it.
Stage face.
Stage face, right?
Yeah, I got my stage face on.
Well, I will say I am smiling because I do now have. I would like to announce I have air conditioning in my office for the first time in about 3 weeks, I believe. So past episodes, I was sweating up a storm, whatever we were doing. Today, nice and cool.
I just thought it was because the content was so weighty.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so since you said that, I have to tell you, this is coming up like with literally every client interaction I'm having right now.
That you sweat a lot?
No, stop it. The comic relief portion is over, Mike.
Excessive perspiration is one of the hallmarks of my one-on-one coaching system. Yeah.
I mean, there's some truth to that, but no, the idea of crucial conversations, the book, the concepts of what we're talking about here, high stakes, high emotion, opposing views. If that's happening, you're probably working in retail right now. That is the gathering that I've made. And I actually had somebody this morning who said that they were doing some training and had an employee just start crying. And it's a relatively new employee, but hey, guess what? Now it's on to the manager to say, I'm not really sure yet, but it looks like something in our training might have triggered something. Maybe we have opposing views here, but we certainly have high emotions and high stakes. So like, people are having to walk through this in real time, very suddenly. I love the fact that we're doing this series. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things that, we're breaking it down into steps. And then, you'll probably never fully remember all the steps. We do have a helpful download that will help. But yeah, just getting familiar enough that I can do it, like you said, in the moment, because all we've been talking about up to this point is preparing to have a crucial conversation.
Yep.
So yeah, episode 109, 110, and 111 was about the prep before the conversations. But as you just illustrated, sometimes it just happens.
The conversation comes to you.
Yeah, it just breaks out, and now. Yeah. Do I have at least a few tools in my toolbox in order to make it a productive conversation?
That's it.
And you're right. We're hearing more and more stories of whether it's customers or team members or fellow managers that, they've been on a knife's edge for quite a bit, and it just takes one small thing to tip it, and they push them over into. All of a sudden a whole bunch of stuff comes out, and now we got to deal with it.
Yeah. And so, I'll quickly review, we talked about before the crucial conversation, you work on you first. So these past episodes have talked about, start with the heart, thinking about what you want for this conversation, for the other person, for the relationship. Learn to look, which is about, sort of looking in the mirror, mainly about what's going on. Mastering your story, which is a real key to this, that there's a narrative in your head and it may not be correct, and thinking through what you need to improve about that, and then where we're going today, the sort of a final, this is almost like the final link before you actually have the conversation. But I would just say, especially to our automotive retail clients, all of this is essentially what you're going to have to master in the new reality of what's happening in our business, but I think many others. That you're going to have to survive the new employee reality and the new customer reality by being able to have these conversations. So today's about making it safe, and I guess. I always feel like I'm talking in hyperbole when we have these this podcast series, because I just keep seeing it show up over and over again. But I'll just say this. I think you could screw up this conversation to some degree, not get this all right. And if you have made it safe, there's a good chance that at the end of the conversation, this person is at least, they were on a knife's edge maybe, and now they're at least feeling like, well, I've got an ally here. I've got somebody who's in my corner. I've got somebody who at least hears me, and it's going to be chalked up as a win. So I think this is a big deal.
Yeah, well, it sounds like reminds me of the Maya Angelou quote. People will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And so I think you're right. Yeah, that maybe I didn't do all the steps and I didn't hit all the points, but I did make it feel safe, and therefore good stuff was exchanged, and we both contributed to what the book calls the shared pool of meaning.
Yeah.
And now we can get, we got the stuff on the table, we can start to work through it.
Yeah.
And so when you consider, okay, I'm going to have this conversation, and even thinking about the physical aspects of the
Yes.
conversation, how will you create safety? Like in our worksheet, we talk about, how can I be fully present without distractions, use calming tones. And so if you just start with being fully present and thinking about, okay, where do I need to have this conversation? Am I in an office with an open floor plan? That's probably not even my office. Maybe I'm in an office, and like a lot of the people we work with, they've got glass on 4 sides of their office. So
yeah.
while it may be separate, it's definitely a fishbowl.
Right.
And maybe they're getting paged and text, and people are sticking their head in the door, the wrong time, asking, can I interrupt? So even, picking the venue, and even within the venue, choosing the seating locations. It's interesting. We work with a lot of dealerships, and if people go into a dealership nowadays, what they see is in the showroom, there are round tables. They're no longer desks.
Right.
And so that's purposeful. And so, 2 people, a salesman and a potential customer, sitting at a round table just feels better than a salesman on one side of the desk, customer on the other side of the desk. Automatically feels more adversarial in that scenario.
Right.
So, but yeah, 2 people sitting around a table, that just feels like my kitchen. And I feel safe in my kitchen. So we're doing everything but bringing, biscuits and gravy.
Right.
So, and if biscuits and gravy makes them feel safe,
we might need to do that. Yeah.
Load her up. Put it on the biscuit. So
you talked about sitting in the round. I think also shoulder to shoulder, where I'm on the same team as you. So I have some managers that are somewhat famous for, hey, let's you and me go for a walk. And they'll walk around the parking lot of their building. And it's not a fishbowl, but you definitely know that you're on a walk with this guy, and everybody can see that you've gone on a walk. So maybe there's a little bit there, but at least you're out of earshot, and you all can do what you need to do. It's very similar to what we're sort of asking service advisors to do in the automotive industry of don't stand behind the desk like you're the judge at a courtroom, but go to the car with them and walk around the vehicle with them, and try to look at it from their perspective, and meet them in sort of I believe Lloyd Schiller, the old service consultant, would say the DMZ. The car is the DMZ, and go to that demilitarized zone, and go to that neutral third place, and have the conversation there. So there's a little bit of that going on in some of the ways that we can approach the conversation, doing it shoulder to shoulder.
Well, in both examples, you're trying to replicate another scenario. So if we go out into the service drive and stand by the car, it's no different than me and my neighbor standing by my car in my driveway.
Yeah.
And so the round table feels like kitchen, standing side by side feels like how I talk to my neighbors.
Right.
We both stand, and we'll stand side by side while one of us grills.
Right.
Mighty fine steaks right there.
Right.
So yeah, we're trying to utilize these things that we know this creates a calming effect. This has this is good stuff. I was with a manager the other day in this room. It's the super long executive table, and the the team member came in, sat down at one end, and the general manager was sitting at the other end. And the general manager, just almost instinctively, this was going to be a high stakes conversation, got up and went to the corner.
Yeah.
So they were sitting, in corner. So they were shoulder to shoulder, just at a 90-degree angle. And it was just perfect. It just changed the whole tone of the get together.
And you said the word tone. I mean, that's a big part of this is the voice tone, right? So there's, we've all heard this a million times, but, body language and tone of voice say a lot more than the words do anyway. And so, keeping that tone of voice from sounding harsh, sounding like you're raising your voice, there are things you can do with your voice to modulate it and say, let's keep this at a calm place. I think that's another aspect of, just sort of the if we want to move in from the physical to the audio, but there are things we can do even to our voice to keep this conversation in a calm, respectful place.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think it's helpful. Like we're still talking about the prep before the conversation. So thinking ahead of time. Okay.
Yep.
How am I gonna sound? What tone am I gonna use? What do I have to caution myself against? So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And since you said that, we have talked about this the last time, I believe, but our friend Thad Bartlett, a great instructional designer, taught us that you script the first line or the first few lines.
Mm-hmm.
I would practice that. I would literally stand in front of a mirror or whatever you need to do to say those words out loud and see how they sound coming out of your mouth. Go ahead and judge them right then and there harshly and see if they would be at all triggering, or if there's something that you've glossed over that you don't need to gloss over, to make sure the person understands that this is a conversation where you're really trying to get at, a better place. So that's, again, all this is done ahead of time, right? This is all prep work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it happened the other day that my daughter was in my office. I was working on the 7 great coaching questions, and one of the questions is what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And so my daughter read it and she goes, "That's a terrible question."
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean it's a terrible question? She goes, "What do you want?" You never say, "What do you want?" to people. And I go, "You're right. I never do say, what do you want?" Yeah. I'd say, "All right, so what do you want?" She's like, "Oh, well, that's a different question."
Yeah, that's a different question.
Yeah,
Isn't
that's
it?
a different question. She was like, "Wow, this is dumb. I've never said it to somebody. It's just they'd punch me in the face."
There's a British sketch show from the early 2000s called That Mitchell and Webb Look, and they have this hysterical bit where it's like a soap opera scene being recorded, and the guy gets to, it's all tense and dramatic, and at one point he's supposed to say, "I just don't know what you want anymore." And every time he utters the line, they keep doing a retake and a retake and a retake, because he keeps saying, "I don't know what you want anymore." And it's just like changed the whole tone of the entire conversation. Ruins the scene, right?
Right.
So how you say these things is key, because it can ruin the scene. So you want to be practiced and ready to say these words.
Right. Well, speaking of practiced and ready, one of the things that the book talks about, which I think is incredibly important, is have a plan for when it no longer feels safe. So so if I'm having this conversation and I notice that it's the other person is moving towards silence or violence, we talked about this previously. Yeah, they're withdrawing, or they're becoming more aggressive. The tone has changed.
Yep.
And at this point you're like, okay, it obviously no longer feels safe for this person. So how do I reestablish safety?
No, wait a minute. I thought that when they got a little violent in their language, you were supposed to meet that violence to show them who's boss. Is that not how we're doing this?
Oh yeah. You meet strength with strength. Yeah. Emotion with emotion. because that makes for a great movie. Doesn't make for a great life, but if you're just a third party watching it, yeah, you grab some popcorn, like, oh,
this will be great.
This is gonna be
I wonder who will win.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, somebody's gonna get killed. Yeah. And so, the goal is, there shouldn't be a winner. It shouldn't be an escalation. And so to keep it from being an escalation, that's a great point. Having thought through, okay, what am I going to do when this happens? Because we know there are opposing views, high stakes, strong emotion. So it's a good chance, no matter how much prep I've done and how safe I've tried to make it, at some point it may start to head that way.
Yeah.
And so what have I got to do to get it back? And we talk about, when I see it going that way, just going back to, all right, so what is our shared mutual goal?
Yeah.
Start with the heart. What do I want for you? What do I want for myself? What do we want for the department, the relationship, whatever it might be? Yeah. And so, I can go back to, I can see this is starting to get heated. Let's think about why it is we're having this conversation, and going back to, this is why we're in the room. This is what we have in common. This is the mutual purpose that we have. The other thing is they talk about, that on that aspect of it, it's about trust.
Right.
Trust is starting to be broken. I think it's all, you're thinking, I'm being manipulated. You're steering this towards your agenda. And so trust is starting to erode. So going back to establish the mutual purpose is part of reestablishing trust.
Yeah. And we've talked about trust many times on this podcast. We've talked about the rational and the irrational elements of trust, and you can see how those play out here, right? On the rational side, if I don't believe you can do it or will do it, then I'm going to have trust violated, right? So in the past, if you've proven that you can't keep a secret, or that you have retribution when somebody tells you something you don't want to hear, or what have you, I'm not going to feel safe when I have a conversation with you. That you talk about deep prep work, right? Like, you're going to have to be a good person to come into this conversation. But there's the emotional side of trust, that I feel like you actually care, and I feel like you're being genuine with me. And you can just see how the things you just said really spill out into that. Let me clear the air. I want to make sure that that I have a purpose here for both of us, instead of there's some ulterior motive. Let me open the kimono and let you know, like, this is really what I'm trying to achieve here. And I think there's a little bit of this that, some of the prep work you've already done about start with the heart really helps you here, right? It might be things that you restate in this sort of trying to keep the conversation back on track. Sometimes, though, it's just going to be such a logical thing that you have to establish so that people can calm down. Mm-hmm. Such as you and I have talked about this. If somebody's holding back, I can tell them as a client, like, hey, just so you know, this is a conversation just between the two of us. And I'm going to tell you logically why. If I violate your trust here, nobody here is ever going to trust me again, and I am useless, and I'm probably fired. I am not going to repeat what you say to me. This is just between the two of us, because it's as good for me as it is for you. Right. Mm-hmm. That's a logical position that they can wrap their head around and say, okay, let me tell you what's really going on.
Well, and you've just simply restated, all right, so what's in it for yourself, what's in it for them, and what's in it for the organization.
That's it. That's exactly.
So that's a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other time when people start to feel unsafe is when they feel that the other person doesn't respect them.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to, like, you were talking about body language, it could be as simple as a heavy sigh or an eye roll.
Yep.
And all of a sudden I feel like now I'm disrespected.
Crossed arms.
Yeah. And so, you disrespect me. Donna Hicks talked about, I feel like my dignity has been impugned.
Yeah.
And so, if I see that, right, we talk about there may be a need for an apology.
Yep.
Right. I apologize if I said that in a way that you took it like this, or that, and then I didn't mean to, here's what we're trying to do, and get back to the mutual purpose thing again. So
Well, yeah, that part is the thing that I think the book has done a really good job about, because you're going to tell them, I apologize, and if this is what you perceived, I want to explicitly state that's not my purpose here. And now I'm going to circle back around to start with the heart, right? What is my purpose here is I want this for me, this for you, and this for us.
mm-hmm. Yep,
it's powerful.
Yeah. So yeah, that's this is I think our listeners, both of them, will be excited to know that this is the end of the prep.
Yeah.
Right. So these 4 things that we've talked about all occur before the conversation, and it's like, thank goodness, now I could just sit down with the person and talk.
And let's actually talk.
In our next episode, we'll talk about, okay, we've done all this prep, we're ready, we've thought it completely through, or as best we can, and now we're going to sit down with this person and actually have the conversation. And so I'm excited to dive into that. It's like, now it's time to do the thing.
Amen. And as a little preview, I would say this. If you've ever felt like you've won the battle but lost the war, next week's episode is for you. It is about how to have that conversation so Loctite that it really does have a long-term benefit for both sides.
Oh yeah. And we know these are the toughest conversations, and therefore they can be the conversations with the greatest impact to your organization, your career, their career, your department's success. Yeah, a lot is hinging upon this, and that's why the extra diligence in the preparation, and even as we outline, there's a process to have this conversation that may make it go a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, amen to that.
So speaking of smooth,
mm-hmm.
let's hear from the silky tones of our announcer, Mr. Wolf.
And that, I guess, is that. It doesn't take a genius. No rights reserved, nothing trademarked, copyrighted, or even original. Feel free to give it to anyone, anytime, using any and all media formats. Warning, Mark and Mike may or may not make another one. I'm your announcer, and I did not get paid a nickel to do this. They won't even let me tell you my name. So, until next time, if there is a next time, stay safe. Be well.
That's good enough.